Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just start with a mental image for a second.
Okay.
Picture your organization not as a building, but as this massive ship trying to navigate through a storm.
With you.
But the storm isn't water. It's just this deluge of email, contracts, mobile device data, cloud services, and all these conflicting regulations swirling around.
And everyone on board is just scrambling.
Exactly. Just trying to keep the data from sinking the entire vessel. That feeling of being totally overwhelmed, of, drowning in unstructured information. That's the organizational chaos we're talking about today.
And that chaos, that operational drag, it's a direct result of seeing information management as just some technical problem or, a compliance checkbox.
An afterthought.
It's an afterthought, and it's not. It is probably the single greatest strategic liability an organization has, but it's also its greatest asset.
A double-edged sword.
Completely. And that's why this deep dive is so essential. We're going to be looking at information governance, or IG, not as some boring checklist you finish, but as the strategic antidote. It's the roadmap to enterprise resilience.
That's right. And our mission today is really tailored for you, the listener. It doesn't matter if you're a manager, a privacy officer, or honestly just someone trying to understand how the most successful companies manage their knowledge capital.
Right.
We've synthesized a whole stack of sources, all focused on strategic IG planning and best practices. And our goal is to give you a clear, detailed, and most importantly, an actionable path to move IG from this abstract idea into something that's a measurable, powerful business driver.
To get us started, though, we really have to define what this discipline even is, because IG isn't some fixed thing. It's evolving incredibly fast.
So what's the current thinking?
We call it a super discipline. That's the best way to think about it. It's this hybrid field where all these highly specialized areas converge.
Okay, like what?
Well, you have data governance, which defines the quality and structure. You have cybersecurity, trying to protect it, privacy, making sure it's compliant,
Records management.
handling the life cycle, e-discovery for litigation risk, and then, the really exciting part, advanced analytics to actually extract the value from it.
So it's less of a single department and more like an operational integrator. It's constantly coordinating all those different efforts.
Precisely. And because the volume of information and, frankly, the regulatory pressures, think about the new privacy laws popping up globally all the time, are growing so fast, the so-called best practices for IG are still emerging.
So we're all learning as we go.
We are. Organizations aren't just following a static rule book. You have to commit to continuously testing, refining, and updating your IG strategies for, really, the next decade.
Okay, so if this is the super discipline, what is the core, the foundational mandate? Where does this whole planning process have to begin if you want strategic success and not just another technical fix?
This is the non-negotiable part. The core mandate is this. Strategic IG planning must start with the organization's high-level business objectives. Period.
So not with the technology.
Absolutely not. Every single IG activity, I don't care if it's designing an email retention schedule or approving a new cloud vendor, it have to contribute verifiable, measurable organizational value.
And if it doesn't?
If you can't draw a clear, defensible line from a specific IG task back to a core business goal like increasing market share, or improving patient safety, or cutting litigation costs, then you're just building bureaucracy. You're wasting time and you're wasting very scarce resources.
That anchoring principle sounds like it's the real difference between success and failure. So let's unpack that. Let's dig into how to actually ensure that connection is made in our first major section.
Okay, so the sources are incredibly clear on this point. The IG plan can't be this isolated technical document that's just, hidden away on an IT server somewhere.
No, it has to be an integral component of the overall enterprise strategic plan. But why is that so hard for most organizations to actually do? It sounds obvious, but it must be challenging. And why is it so non-negotiable for success?
It's challenging because IG usually starts in a silo. Legal needs better e-discovery tools, or IT needs better cloud management.
It's a reaction to a specific problem.
It's a reaction. And when it operates in isolation like that, it's inevitably seen as a barrier, not an enabler. It's the Department of No.
Right.
And it's non-negotiable because that alignment is what ensures every IG initiative actually reinforces the company's goals. Think of a big healthcare system that's acquiring, say, 20 smaller regional clinics.
Okay.
If IG isn't strategically aligned with the M&A goals, you're going to end up with 20 different sets of policies, totally disparate data quality, and massive security holes. It just cripples the entire integration strategy.
So the IG plan has to be there from day one of the merger talks.
From day one, it has to standardize policies, procedures, audits, all to make sure that that integration is seamless, it's secure, and it's legally defensible.
I can see how trying to tackle everything at once, though, would just lead to analysis paralysis. The sources really emphasize prioritizing a small set of core organizational objectives.
Yes.
But how do you actually do that? How do you make those tough calls? It sounds like you need some kind of structured decision-making process.
You absolutely need structure. You can't prioritize based on which department head shouts the loudest. That's a recipe for disaster.
So what's the mechanism?
A really effective one is a risk-value matrix. Some people call it a triage method. You categorize all the potential IG projects on two axes: business value, from high to low, and organizational risk, also high to low.
And then you attack the quadrants.
Exactly. You start with the high-risk, high-value quadrant. That is your immediate priority. That's the data that, if you mismanage it, will cause the greatest financial or legal harm.
But it's also the data that offers the most upside.
Precisely. It also offers immense competitive advantage if you can leverage it correctly. So we're talking about things like critical patient data quality or intellectual property management. Addressing just a small set of these core objectives keeps the focus sharp, and it prevents the whole effort from drifting into, just satisfying smaller departmental agendas.
The conversations have to stay strategic.
They have to. They have to center on defining specific, actionable projects that directly address the most critical risks and the highest strategic aims at the same time.
Can you give us a concrete example of how a crisis can kind of force this prioritization?
Oh, absolutely. Let's stick with the healthcare example. Imagine that organization gets hit with multiple, very high-profile lawsuits because of errors in their electronic health records.
And those errors led to bad patient outcomes.
Exactly. Adverse patient outcomes. Suddenly, the top-line organizational objective shifts to mitigating this existential risk and, of course, improving patient safety.
Everything else takes a back seat.
Everything. In that scenario, the IG priority shifts immediately and very explicitly to data governance and rapid data quality improvements. The focus narrows dramatically. You're not talking about general retention policies anymore. You're focused on the accuracy, the completeness, the timeliness, and the consistency of clinical data.
Because that's now the business imperative.
And it's the legal defense requirement. It makes the choice obvious to everyone.
So once those priorities are set, the IG approach has to be holistic. The sources talk a lot about consistent policies across really diverse activities. What are the key areas for this holistic policy coverage?
Yeah, and we're moving way beyond just having, standardized document templates. Holistic policy coverage means creating consistent rules for every single facet of information interaction.
Give me some examples in that health context.
Okay, so it includes patient identity verification procedures. How do we confirm who a patient is consistently, whether they're in the ER, the billing office, or using the online patient portal?
Same process everywhere.
Same process. It includes comprehensive litigation readiness protocols, not just for email, but for every communication channel, chat, collaboration platforms, everything.
And what about devices?
That's a huge one. It must extend to specific usage guidelines for mobile devices, social media platforms, and how data is handled in all the various cloud environments. If a doctor can access patient data on their personal tablet, the policies governing that tablet's encryption, its operating system, and how the data is handled have to be identical to the rules for a desktop computer inside the hospital.
This all sounds like a joint effort. I mean, IG is handling the why and the what, but IT is providing the how and the infrastructure.
That's a great way to put it.
So how critical is that alignment with the IT strategy? Can IG possibly succeed if IT is marching to a completely different drum?
It's doomed. It's doomed if they're not aligned. IG and IT have to move in lockstep toward those shared business objectives, or you just get policy failure.
I can picture that.
I've seen it happen countless times. The compliance team mandates a very specific, very strict data retention policy, but the IT infrastructure budget can't support the storage capacity needed.
Or the team just hasn't been trained on the archive system.
Exactly. Alignment avoids that classic and very frustrating scenario. It means employee workflows actually become more efficient and productive because the technology supports the policy instead of forcing people to find workarounds for cumbersome rules.
Can we talk about some tangible IT examples of this alignment in action?
Sure. Think about daily operations. If the IT strategy is to migrate the entire organization to a new unified cloud platform,
Which is happening everywhere.
right, IG is the one who dictates the compliance and the quality standards during that migration. They make sure no data gets lost and that all the retention rules are maintained in the new system. Or, if the IT team is deploying a new standard application across the entire workforce, IG ensures the training covers the specific data handling protocols required by law for that app.
And what about emerging tech, like generative AI?
That's the perfect current example. IT provides the AI tools, but IG has to be the one to define the acceptable data inputs, the privacy safeguards, and the rules for how AI-generated outputs can be used in official business records.
So that tight partnership ensures that when the technology changes, the governance changes right alongside it seamlessly.
It has to.
But the source material also brings up another really powerful guidepost: corporate culture. How does the IG plan need to respect the intrinsic nature of the organization?
Corporate culture isn't just the inspirational posters you put on the wall. It dictates how rules are perceived, how they're enforced, and whether they're adopted by the staff.
So you can't just drop in a generic template.
Never. The IG plan has to reflect the organization's unique operational DNA. You have to analyze key cultural factors, like the company's risk appetite. A highly regulated financial institution is, by its nature, risk-averse.
They have to be.
Their IG plan will focus heavily on controls, on audit trails, on defensibility above almost all else. But conversely, an agile, innovation-focused tech startup is risk-taking. Their IG plan might prioritize speed, accessibility, and leveraging data for a competitive edge, and they might accept a slightly higher but managed level of risk.
And what about that innovation posture? Does the company wait for others to prove a technology, or do they like to jump in early?
Exactly. Is the organization a first adopter, always eager to embrace the new thing, or are they a cautious follower? This directly impacts the investment strategy. A first adopter might allocate a significant budget to governing emerging tech like, say, quantum computing security readiness,
Way out on the cutting edge.
while a follower would wait until that technology is mainstream and the governance standards are basically settled. This deep understanding of the culture dictates not just what policies you write, but how you write them, how you train them, and how you enforce them to get maximum adoption.
This is where the source provides a really critical case study: predictive coding for e-discovery. It offers huge efficiency gains, but it's also inherently risky, especially from a legal defensibility standpoint.
It is the perfect illustration of this kind of integrated IG decision-making. Predictive coding, it uses machine learning, often deep learning models, to sort and prioritize millions of documents during litigation e-discovery.
It saves a ton of money and time.
Drastically reduces the labor and the cost. However, the legal system and the organization itself have to grapple with what's called the black box challenge.
The black box being the algorithm itself, you can't always perfectly explain why it decided one document was more important than another.
Precisely. So implementing it involves legal risks. Will the court accept the algorithm's methodology? Will the opposing counsel be able to successfully challenge the process? The key strategic insight here is that IG must ensure the methodology is defensible.
What does that mean in practice?
It means documenting every parameter, the seed sets you use to train it, all the quality control checks, and the human oversight involved. The decision to adopt it can't just be made by the legal department because they want to save money. It has to reflect integrated IG policies, IT's readiness to support the software, and the organization's specific tolerance for risk when adopting an emerging legal technology.
So IG is really the reconciliation engine for those three forces: legal, IT, and risk.
That's its job.
Okay, finally, before any plan goes into execution, we hit the resource reality check. I remember reading an anecdote about a client whose IG plan became shelfware within 6 months because they just completely underestimated this part.
It's a very common failure point.
So how do you tactically justify the necessary resources to the CFO who's always looking to cut costs?
Well, that anecdote is why so many plans fail. A perfectly designed plan is worthless if you can't staff it or fund it. Success hinges entirely on resource availability.
It's more than just leadership saying yes.
Oh, much more. Obviously, you need that dedicated leadership support, but tactically, you need adequate management time or bandwidth. And when you justify this to finance, you have to calculate the necessary staffing levels, not just for the initial implementation, but for the ongoing monitoring and auditing.
You have to quantify it.
You have to.
Yeah.
You say, we need 20% of the CIO's time, and the full-time equivalent of 2 compliance analysts dedicated solely to IG maintenance, because that reduces our annual legal spend by X%.
So you're linking the cost of that bandwidth directly to mitigating a much larger recurring cost.
Exactly. And the budget itself is non-negotiable for, let's call it cruising altitude IG.
Mm-hmm.
You need the software licenses for things like legal hold platforms, the continuous training for staff on new policies, and the funding for external audits. The sources are very clear. Without quantifying the necessary time, money, and leadership support, the IG plan fails before it even starts. So we secured that internal foundation. We've got alignment with business goals, with culture, with IT. But IG plans, they just can't exist in a vacuum.
Right. The world outside keeps changing.
It does. So our next section addresses why organizations must be continuously assessing the external environment, all the business, legal, regulatory, and technological factors, just to remain resilient and relevant.
Why this continuous external scan? I mean, can't we just set our policy and maintain it for a few years?
That is a recipe for catastrophic noncompliance. The information landscape is just way too fluid. External scanning ensures the IG plan remains adaptable. It's about anticipating risks and seizing opportunities that exist outside your own four walls.
So these external factors are constantly pushing the organization to change.
Constantly. Whether it's a new data residency law that requires you to physically move your infrastructure, or a new AI trend that completely redefines how data is created and consumed.
Let's start with the non-negotiable bedrock here, the legal and regulatory factors. This obviously requires deep collaboration with the legal team.
Absolutely. The IG planning process needs the legal team right at the center, identifying all the relevant laws that mandate specific actions.
We're talking about things like GDPR or CCPA.
Exactly. Strict privacy laws, specific retention periods for financial and clinical records, security mandates, and the constantly evolving e-discovery obligations. And they need to categorize these requirements very, very clearly.
Okay, how should they categorize them to make them actually actionable in a strategy? It can't just be a long list of laws.
No, it can't.
Yeah.
They need to break them down into 3 critical categories. First, the mandatory legal requirements. These are the must-dos, the things that are non-negotiable because they're written in statute.
Black and white.
Black and white. Second, you have the areas where the law allows for interpretation or some flexibility, for example, defining what reasonable security means. This is where your risk management professionals have to step in and define the acceptable level of legal risk the organization is willing to tolerate.
And the third category?
But the third is assessing the impact of conflicting laws. For instance, balancing a national security mandate that tells you to retain certain data against a privacy law that demands you destroy it immediately.
And the fundamental rule, as we established earlier, is that if there is any conflict between a strategic business goal and a legal requirement, the law wins.
The law wins every time. Compliance is the floor. All the other IG benefits, efficiency, speed, extracting value, are all built on top of that compliant foundation. If you optimize for speed, but you sacrifice compliance, you're accepting massive fines or litigation exposure.
This brings us to the political landscape. The sources suggest IG has to incorporate some political forecasting, given how rapidly regulations can change. The simple analysis is often that one party means less regulation, another means more. Is that too simplistic for a strategic plan?
It's entirely too simplistic, and relying on that kind of binary thinking is actually dangerous. The IG strategy has to be built on policy modeling, not on party preference.
What does policy modeling look like?
It means a deeper insight. It involves analyzing specific legislative areas. For example, a conservative climate might push for reduced general business regulation, but at the same time introduce more stringent national security mandates or rapid data breach reporting requirements.
Right.
Conversely, a progressive environment might increase consumer data rights, with new opt-out mechanisms, while at the same time offering greater flexibility in how data is used for scientific research.
So the IG team needs to model the potential costs based on these specific policy shifts across different regulatory domains.
Exactly. You have to model the cost of compliance for major policy shifts, regardless of which party is in power. You look at the trends. Is data residency becoming stricter globally? If so, does this mandate a costly infrastructure overhaul to store EU data only in the EU? Is there pending legislation around the mandatory auditing of AI models? If so, the IG strategy must allocate resources to build governance frameworks that can handle those potential future costs now.
Moving from policy to the wallet, let's survey the business and economic conditions. When the economy dips, IG budgets are usually one of the first things to feel the squeeze.
Correct. Economic downturns or even just constrained sector budgets mean limited funding for staffing, for technology licenses, for training. And this often forces IG leaders to get extremely creative and justify their existence much faster.
So what's the tactical strategy when budget cuts are threatening the entire program? I mean, you can't just stop governing.
No, you can't. The strategy is targeted scaling and measurable ROI delivery. If resources are limited, you start small and you prove your value rapidly.
A pilot program.
A pilot program. Implement IG principles in a single high-risk, high-value division, say the R&D department that's managing all the patents, or the clinical trials division handling the most sensitive patient health information. You don't attempt a difficult enterprise-wide rollout from day one.
So you turn the economic hardship into an opportunity.
Exactly. An opportunity to demonstrate immediate, verifiable risk reduction in a controlled environment.
And this leads right into the major hurdle for IG leaders, proving return on investment. Executives demand quick, measurable returns. The sources really highlight this measurement challenge, differentiating between the easy-to-quantify benefits and those that are substantial but much harder to measure.
This is where we have to arm the IG leader with the right justification tools. The easily quantifiable benefits are your immediate ammunition for getting funding.
Okay, give us the ammunition.
Focus on the areas where the cost savings are concrete and recurring. Security Awareness Training, or SAT. You measure the reduction in successful phishing attempts and the direct reduction in incident response costs.
That's a hard number.
It's a hard number. Legal hold management. You measure the reduction in custodians improperly deleting data, which reduces your risk of sanctions. And critically, e-discovery optimization. Every single dollar you save on outside counsel fees, data processing, and document review is a direct, measurable saving. Those numbers are immediately legible to the CFO.
But if IG only focuses on risk reduction, it misses the major strategic value, that long-term competitive edge. How do we defend the harder-to-quantify benefits like better decision-making or enhanced competitiveness?
This requires using some creative proxies for measurement. For example, improved decision-making is hard to measure directly, right? But you can correlate data quality improvements with operational metrics.
How so?
If IG standardizes metadata and enforces clean data entry, you might measure the reduction in time it takes for the finance department to complete their quarterly reports, or the reduction in external audit findings related to data integrity.
So you're measuring the speed and efficiency gains that come from having cleaner information.
Exactly. And better information searchability for employees is also a huge long-term value. You can measure that by surveying staff on how much time they spend looking for information versus using information. A strong IG program can demonstrably reduce that employee idle time caused by information chaos, and you can translate those hours saved into productivity gains. You use these proxies to defend the long-term strategic investment.
That brings us to our third external landscape, analyzing information technology trends. IG has to be constantly monitoring the tech that drives the organization.
IT is the kinetic energy of the organization. IG provides the regulatory framework and the steering wheel. Organizations must account for the current and emerging major ICT trends.
The list is long.
It's huge. We're talking about pervasive mobile computing, the full migration to hybrid and pure cloud models, the governance around the explosion of social media and all these new communication platforms.
Big data, IoT.
Big data, the ingestion and management of it, the rise of IoT devices generating these vast amounts of unstructured information, and now, of course, the overwhelming impact of generative AI and machine learning.
How deep into the technical weeds do the IG policies need to go to address these trends effectively?
They have to get into specific technical standards with granular detail, and this is often a point of conflict between legal and IT.
Why is that?
Because, for instance, in a BYOD bring your own device environment, the policy can't just say be secure. That's useless. It must mandate specific controls. Encryption standards for data at rest and in transit, supported operating systems like, say, iOS 15 or higher, Android 12 or higher.
Very specific.
And critically, the enforcement of containerization, segregating the corporate data from the personal data within the device.
And why is that containerization piece so vital?
It's the enforcement mechanism for things like legal hold and defensible deletion. If an employee leaves, IT needs the ability to remotely wipe the corporate data without touching the user's personal photos or text messages.
A huge legal risk if you get that wrong.
Massive. If IG policies aren't specific on technical standards like containerization or remote wipe capability, the organization risks huge legal exposure by either improperly deleting personal data or failing to retrieve corporate data during e-discovery. And furthermore, we have to talk about future-proofing. IG needs to pay attention to detailed technical standards that support longevity and access, not just current risk. This means defining supported file formats for long-term retention, often requiring migration to archival standards like PDFA.
What's special about PDFA?
It's a version of PDF specifically designed for long-term readability, independent of the original software that created it. This kind of attention to detail, adherence to long-term digital preservation or LTDP best practices, and standardizing storage ensures you can securely and efficiently use information for decades, preventing very costly data remediation projects down the road.
Okay, so we've completed our big analytical scan. We've looked at internal alignment and external anticipation. Now let's talk about structural success. You can't run a critical program like this without the right organizational architecture.
You can't.
And the sources outline a few essential best practices, and the first one feels like the absolute linchpin of the whole thing.
It is. Securing executive sponsorship.
Yeah.
If you want to know why most IG initiatives fail, just look for an absent, non-committal, or a low-level sponsor.
It can't be a mid-level manager.
No. A senior-level sponsor, ideally a chief operating officer, chief legal officer, or even the CEO, is essential for enforcing participation, securing the resources, and just removing all the internal political barriers that will pop up.
And they have to own it.
They have to own the IG business case, sign the checks, and really commit to the long-term sustained success of the program.
I want to focus on the stability angle for a second. The sources suggest securing a deputy sponsor is also crucial. Why is that?
Because organizational life happens. Executive sponsors are often high flyers. They move roles, they get promoted, or they leave the organization entirely.
And the program dies with them.
It can. Having a committed deputy ensures that the program doesn't lose momentum or direction during that transition period, which can sometimes last 6 months to a year. The deputy ensures continuity and institutional memory, preventing the program from just collapsing while a new champion is identified.
So once that senior backing is locked in, the next essential structural element is the IG Council. Why is this cross-functional steering committee so necessary, and who has to be at that table?
The council is necessary because information is managed and impacted by everyone. No single department, not legal, not IT, can manage this dual challenge of maximizing information's value while also mitigating all the associated risk alone.
It's too big for one group.
It's too big. The council ensures you get a holistic 360-degree view, and membership must be mandatory and cross-functional. We're talking about legal counsel, health information management or records management, IT infrastructure, privacy and security, finance, HR, and the critical business units like operations or R&D.
That broad representation prevents silos for sure, but it also sounds like a forum for conflict. How does the council manage the inevitable tension between departments?
That tension is the council's entire job. They need a clear charter, which we'll discuss next, and a mandate to prioritize the benefit to the enterprise over any single department's gain.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If IT wants to move really quickly to a new cloud service for efficiency, but legal raises a red flag because the vendor's data residency policies conflict with state law.
The IG Council is where that fight happens.
It's the formal mechanism to resolve that.
Yeah.
They prioritize based on the business objective and the mandatory legal constraint, ensuring that the fastest path is also the compliant path. And it's crucial that the chair of this council often rotates or is a highly respected neutral facilitator to ensure fairness.
Moving from the team structure to the guiding document, what's needed to formalize this whole effort?
You need foundational documents, and the main one is a formal IG program charter. And this isn't just a mission statement, it's a living constitution for the program.
What goes in it?
It has to define the IG mission, the specific measurable goals, which you've tied back to Section 1, the organizational structure, roles, responsibilities, the council membership, and, most importantly, the decision-making authority and the dispute resolution process.
And what gives that document its weight?
The sign-off. Critically, it requires formal sign-off from the executive sponsor and, ideally, from all the department heads who are represented on the council. That signature symbolizes the transition away from a temporary effort and establishes formal accountability for everyone to adhere to it.
And that sign-off reinforces the idea that IG is not a project with an end date. The sources stress that it has to be treated as a continuous program or evergreen. What does that ongoing maintenance actually look like?
It means IG has to be embedded into the corporate DNA. It never really ends. It requires continuous improvement, constant monitoring of metrics.
Like what kind of metrics?
Are employees accessing data? appropriately?
Oh,
Are we actually reducing our risk? And it requires regular scheduled audits, the sources wisely compared to a workplace safety program.
how so?
When you bring in a new piece of technology, or you hire a new team, or you undergo a merger, that action has to trigger an IG review and a policy update. Just like implementing a new machine on the factory floor triggers a safety review.
So how does an organization figure out where it currently stands on this continuous journey?
They leverage maturity models. These existing frameworks are absolutely essential for structuring your assessment of readiness and for guiding your improvement efforts. They give you a common language and a way to benchmark your progress against industry standards.
We listed a few acronyms earlier. We should probably define those a bit more clearly for the listener. What's the core focus of those different models?
Let's clarify. First, there's the IGPMM, the Information Governance Process Maturity Model.
Yeah.
This is a very robust model, and it focuses heavily on assessing your process maturity across 22 different criteria related to legal, privacy, and security functions. If you want to know how mature your e-discovery process is, you use the IGPMM.
And for healthcare.
Specifically for those in the health sector, there's the AHIMA IG Adoption Model, IGAM, and the IG Health Rate. Their focus is explicitly on the health sector, and they chart your maturity across the entire healthcare data lifecycle, from patient intake all the way to billing.
And the last one.
And finally, for just foundational information lifecycle management, RM's Generally Accepted Record-Keeping Principles, or JARPI, provides the ethical and professional framework for records management fundamentals. Using these tools gives you a structured path for continuous refinement, ensuring you're not just guessing about your next step.
Let's pivot a bit to maximizing the asset itself, which requires prioritizing data quality and process redesign. What's the high-stakes connection between data quality and IG's strategic goals?
High data quality, and by that I mean data that is accurate, complete, timely, and consistent, is the absolute cornerstone of strategic success. In healthcare, it directly reduces medical errors and malpractice risk.
And on the financial side?
Financially, it improves population health outcomes and ensures better financial performance through accurate billing and predictive analytics. IG's role is to enforce the data governance policies that maintain these quality dimensions from the very moment the data is first captured.
And process redesign is the mechanism for enforcing that quality, particularly with something like electronic health records or EHRs.
Yes, EHR systems are a classic case study here. So many organizations just digitize their old paper-based processes, and in doing so, they turn the EHR into this sprawling, inefficient digital filing cabinet.
That's not governance, it's just digital clutter.
Exactly. Business processes have to be fundamentally redesigned to maximize efficiency and the accuracy of protected health information at the point of creation. For instance, standardizing clinical documentation templates, ensuring mandatory fields are filled out consistently, and integrating quality checks directly into the EHR workflow. The redesign ensures the technology forces the desired governance, rather than fighting against it.
So IG is also about maximizing the value of the asset, not just mitigating a risk. How does IG help organizations truly leverage their information assets?
This is where IG moves from being seen as a cost center to being a value generator. Organizations should be using the full spectrum of analytics. That includes descriptive, which is what happened, diagnostic, why it happened, predictive, what will happen.
Like predicting patient readmissions.
Exactly. And prescriptive, which is what should we do about it, like automatically adjusting your supply chain based on demand forecasts. But strong data governance and quality assurance is mandatory to make sure the data feeding these advanced analytics is accurate and reliable.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, catastrophic decision out.
And the ultimate goal there is monetization or a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. Organizations should be actively exploring ways to monetize their data, either directly, say, through sanitized data sales to research institutions following IG's strict privacy standards, of course, or indirectly, through enhanced operational efficiency and strategic decision-making that gives them a definitive competitive edge in the marketplace.
Our final structural best practice involves standardization. Now, this sounds a little like paperwork, but the sources say it's vital for long-term corporate memory and for defensibility.
It is critically important, especially for legal defensibility. Standardization means defining a controlled vocabulary, consistent terminology that's used to describe records, documents, and business activities across the entire enterprise.
And standardizing metadata, too.
That's the other half of it. If every department labels a financial document differently, Q3 report, third quarter finance, earnings statement, you simply can't find it efficiently. Standardized metadata dramatically improves searchability, retrieval, and compliance capabilities for e-discovery and for internal audit requirements. In a litigation scenario, being able to rapidly and accurately produce all the relevant documents is the difference between a successful defense and massive sanctions. Hashtag UED1. Formulating and executing the actionable plan. Okay, so we've done our analytical scan, we've established the structural framework. Now comes what is often the most difficult phase, translating that massive amount of analysis into something that's truly practical and actionable. This final stage is all about synthesizing and prioritizing the plan into a real roadmap.
This is the point where internal politics can just quickly derail the whole effort, right? Legal wants one retention policy, IT wants another vendor, finance is balking at the cost. The IG Council is necessary, but how does it engage in, let's call it, structured negotiation to prevent that departmental competition?
That tension is exactly why the Charter needs to have clear rules. Structured negotiation is key. First, all departmental requests have to be framed in terms of organizational risk and value, not just departmental convenience.
No pet projects.
No pet projects. If legal demands a longer retention period for certain contracts, they have to quantify the risk that's being mitigated versus the storage cost that's being incurred. If IT wants to swap vendors, they have to justify the cost savings against the compliance risk of that migration.
So the IG Council is acting as the honest broker here, constantly referring back to those high-level business objectives we defined way back in Section 1.
Precisely. They use that risk-value matrix to depoliticize the decision-making. And the executive sponsor, or their deputy, is absolutely critical here because they have the authority to break the deadlock and prevent the process from just dragging on endlessly. They have to stop it from drifting into competitive lobbying and ensure the plan stays anchored in enterprise resilience.
What's the first step in the actual drafting process once those negotiations are underway?
You have to start broadly. Develop high-level strategies for all the major IG domains: data governance, EPHI quality, security awareness, mobile computing policies, vital records management, e-discovery workflows, and so on. You define the full landscape of necessary action without trying to prioritize it just yet.
And then comes the difficult second step, prioritization based on what are always limited resources.
This is where you apply all that analysis you did on organizational goals, risks, and business impact from sections 1 and 2. You prioritize your strategies based on those factors. The sources consistently indicate that the immediate priorities often include foundational risk mitigation efforts,
Such as?
improving clinical data quality, which has an immediate patient safety impact, protecting vital records through rigorous disaster recovery planning, which is about business continuity, and strengthening privacy and security safeguards, which is about regulatory compliance.
The team has to be disciplined enough to cut the projects that are just nice to have, but don't actually move the needle on those core business objectives.
Absolutely. A great technique for ensuring focus is to physically display the 3 to 5 core organizational goals prominently during all the strategy meetings. If a proposed action doesn't clearly align with one of those visible goals, it goes into a lower priority bucket for later review.
Once the strategies are finalized, we need actionable plans and accountability. Strategies are the what, but action plans are the how, and they definitely require owners.
Right. Action plans break the strategies down into specific, minute implementation steps. Who does what, by when. They have to clearly define roles, responsibilities, and critically, accountability. Every single task, whether it's updating the BYOD policy or training 5,000 employees on it, must have an assigned owner who is publicly accountable for its completion.
And since IG is a continuous program, how do they measure that accountability and the effectiveness over time?
Through continuous monitoring and auditing. Audits are not optional, they're how you measure effectiveness. They help determine whether the IG policies are being followed correctly and whether they're actually producing the intended results. For example, measuring the adoption rate of new standardized data entry forms. The IG plan must then be continuously refined based on those audit findings, ensuring the policies stay practical, effective, and flexible enough to adapt to external changes.
A great way to get the ball rolling on this and build momentum is through small wins. The sources call this creating new IG driving programs.
Momentum is so vital for morale and for sustained funding. Launching smaller, visible sub-programs demonstrates commitment, it motivates employees, and it signals that IG is happening now, not some far-off future plan. Employees need to understand why IG matters and how it impacts their daily work, and small, successful programs provide that tangible proof.
What are some examples of highly effective IG driving programs that can provide those early, measurable wins for management?
There are several excellent high-impact examples. Information Security and Awareness Training, or SAT, provides an immediate reduction in information risks, and it's very easy to track. EPHI data quality initiatives can show measurable improvements in reducing medical errors within a single quarter.
Something you can put on a slide.
Exactly. Revamping the legal hold notification, or LHN, process immediately improves accountability and auditability, reducing legal risk. Or, implementing technology-assisted review, or TAR, training to strengthen e-discovery efficiency and show concrete legal cost reduction within the first large case you use it on.
So breaking the program into these manageable components ensures that the teams can show measurable progress in short timeframes, which has to reinforce that executive sponsorship.
And this is the critical tactical requirement. The IG team must negotiate and define the success metrics, the KPIs, before they launch these initiatives. Clear metrics provide the foundation for accountability, and they help justify the continuation and expansion of the IG efforts down the line. You can't just say, our LHN process is better.
You need a number.
You have to say, the average time from LHN initiation to custodian acknowledgement dropped from 72 hours to 8 hours. That's a real metric.
Before securing the final sign-off, there's one more necessary check: gathering broader stakeholder input.
This is the practicality test. Even the best cross-functional teams have blind spots. The draft plan has to be tested with a broader group of operational staff, department heads, clinicians, risk managers, the people who actually have to execute the work every day.
Finding the problems before they become problems.
Exactly. This broader review ensures the plan is practical, realistic, and widely supported. You're identifying procedural choke points that only the frontline staff would ever know about. And by doing that, you're strengthening the acceptance and the ownership of the final plan.
Once that input is integrated and the final draft is polished, it's time for the formal buy-in, sign-off, and execution.
This is the apex moment. The IG strategic plan must receive formal approval and sign-off from that senior-level executive sponsor. And following this, the plan should be presented to the entire executive leadership, the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, to secure organization-wide support and understanding of the commitment that's required.
What are the key messages in that big executive presentation? I mean, you're essentially asking for a continued and probably growing investment.
Transparency and linkage. The presentation has to clearly communicate the required resources, the expected benefits, both the quantifiable and the non-quantifiable ones, the specific risk reduction you've achieved, like the probability of a massive fine being lowered from 30% to 10%, and the direct alignment with those high-level business goals.
You also have to address the budget concerns head-on.
You must preemptively address them by reinforcing the cost of inaction, the inevitable future fines and litigation fees that will come if you do nothing.
And finally, the sustained implementation begins.
And execution requires ongoing discipline. Regular status meetings to track progress against those KPIs, continuous communication and training to reinforce policy adoption across all levels of the enterprise, and planned audits to measure adherence and effectiveness. You have to remember, IG is a living document. Continuous auditing and monitoring, combined with that anticipation of external changes, require a continuous refinement to ensure the plan maintains maximum effectiveness, relevance, and alignment with the organization's needs.
That is a comprehensive tactical roadmap, moving from, philosophical alignment all the way through to accountable, measured execution. #tag outro.
As we wrap up this deep dive into strategic information governance, let's just quickly summarize the core takeaways that you should internalize to help drive this initiative forward in your own organization.
First, strategic planning for IG must always start with identifying and prioritizing your key business objectives, using tools like a risk-value matrix to make sure that every IG dollar spent contributes measurable value. Second, you have to continuously scan the external environment, especially the legal mandates and emerging technology trends. You've got to model the cost of compliance for potential policy shifts, ensuring legal requirements are always your foundation.
Third, secure and sustain that executive sponsorship and a cross-functional council. IG programs just cannot thrive without actively involved leadership who commit to breaking those internal political barriers.
Fourth, treat IG as an ongoing evergreen program, not as a project. Use maturity models like the IGPMM or IJAM to structure your assessment and guide your continuous improvement and auditing efforts.
And finally, prioritize for quick, measurable wins like optimizing e-discovery or implementing high-impact security training to build momentum, validate the plan, and justify future larger investments in those harder-to-quantify strategic benefits.
Ultimately, this entire IG framework boils down to something fundamental. It's about Understanding how long information retains its business value, which then guides your retention, storage, and lifecycle planning. If an organization fails to govern its data, that data will inevitably transform from a strategic asset into an acute legal or financial liability.
It's just a matter of time.
Right. And this raises a crucial practical question for you, the learner, to consider as you finish this deep dive. How does your organization currently measure the lifespan of its most valuable information assets? That point at which the cost of retaining the information begins to outweigh the strategic or legal value it provides? And what processes are needed to ensure that value is extracted before the information becomes a liability?
And we highly encourage you to explore the maturity models we mentioned, the IGPMM and the IHEMA-IGAM, as really practical starting points for assessing your organization's current readiness and charting your own path toward that critical enterprise resilience.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into strategic information governance. We'll see you next time.